Hello and good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the What Life. Tonight's race is absolutely phenomenal for all the good reasons, for all the bad reasons. This was the most insanely fast race that I've ever been a part of. I averaged 3.9 watts per kg for over 20 minutes, and I still get dropped. I feel like these races are getting faster and faster. Guys, check out the start of this because, stick around for the whole thing because we're going to actually compare. I did an effort on Friday night out to Zwift. And we're going to compare and talk about that and compare it to this style of racing. But first and foremost, it's a 4-lap loop of the volcano circuit, but it's got a long lead in. So 4 really tough laps. There's 80 meters of vertical over the entire race. The race itself is 13 miles or 21 kilometers long. It takes me just under 30 minutes to get this done, 29 something. The guys that win our group, the Cat B group, do it in 28:0 something. So this was super hot, guys, and I'm not just saying that. I set new records in absolutely everything, and I still get dropped. So this was, as I said, like a super hot race, 120 people, 118 odd people taking part, and just some phenomenally good riders. Someone in one of my comments the other day just said that Cat B at the moment is a bit of a moving target in that it's just getting better and better riders. And he was actually referring to like Cat B maybe 2 years ago, and saying that back then it was an easier place to hold groups, and it's just become a bit of a moving target in that it's attracting better and better cyclists. Bear in mind, we've gone out the gates now, guys, and my FTP on a ramp test, which is ambitious, is 310, and I've been holding well over that, like 120% of that, for over minute and a half, 90 seconds, but like well over it, and I'm still kind of only just middle of this front group. So if you rode this race, you will understand it. This one felt just insanely fast. It was like, I think there'll be points when you might be able to hear me just say, wow, this is just like absolute killer. So to give you some numbers from this evening, because it's really, I think it's quite interesting. You guys might not be crazy bothered with it, but for me personally, I did this in 29:37, right? I averaged 3.8 watts per kg, and that's just under 3.9, so I'm like a few watts short of 3.9 watts per kg for 30 minutes. I averaged 287 watts, and that's an average for the race, and I get dropped, so there's a little bit of that where it's a bit of soft pedaling, but not a huge amount. That's normalized to 301, but it was just the format that it's put down in that's slightly different. So to give you an idea, on Friday night I did an effort up out to Zwift, and during that effort up out to Zwift, I think I held like 296 watts for the climb up the Alp. But what I did was I was trying to hold 50 to 65 RPM, my cadence. I wanted to keep my cadence slow and just work on strength. And because I was so consistent with it, and I wasn't spiking my watts and coming up and down, which is what, if you look at my watt chart now during the race, you'll see that it's just like it's spiky. It's not smooth. I was able to consistently put out 3.8, 3.9 watts for an hour, and it felt okay. But it's the spikes. It's these little spikes in the wattage that take your lactate well over your LT2 and then drop you back down. And it's the thing that, people dive in the comments a lot and talk about repeatability, and it's 100% that. That's exactly what it is. So if we dive into the race, I actually had to use a power-up on the first lap. I come into a lot of these races not actually knowing the route or knowing the course that well. So I see other people doing stuff, and sometimes it panics me, and I just dive in and do it. I saw a few guys using their feather on the lead-in of this, on the start of this race. And I dived in, used my feather without realizing that, in actual fact, if you haven't ridden this race, you kind of want to save your feather for what we're going to refer to the punch up to the volcano. And we're about to get to that now. So I've now got this little punch here, which is like a 30-second effort, maybe a 45-second effort once you get over the top at the most. but I had to work a little bit harder to try and stay in this front group. But so I kind of put a little bit of effort into my positioning for this, and then I rode into it. But I will say, if you haven't ridden this race yet, the watts coming over that punch, and that's 20 seconds up to the punch, and then continuing through the volcano, you have to really be on it and just stay on it. And that's the one thing that beat me up 4 times or 5 times over how many times we ever had to do it during the race. Because you do the punch, and then you've got to hold that wattage to kind of stay in the group. And that was absolutely brutal, absolutely tore me to pieces, kind of performing in that way, compared to when I did my effort up the Out to Zwift the other night, where it was just consistent, just nice, easy churning, turning the legs over. So it was that punch and having to repeat that and kind of go well over threshold and then bring it back down. And basically on lap 4, it just proves to be all too much for me. But I mean, the race that we were in this evening, it honestly, guys, it just felt like, I don't really know how to describe it, but I was definitely riding it, and a few other guys, there were a few comments just like, geez, this one's quick. And it almost, because there's so many people in the group, it looks like it strings out a bunch of times, looks like there's a few little breaks, but everyone always ends up coming back together. And if you haven't ridden this race and you're using this as a bit of recon for this race, it's the 4 loops, but each side of that loop is ridden very differently. So the tempo comes right off, or it feels like it comes right off as you get within like half a mile of that little punch up into the volcano. And you get a little chance, and people kind of gather their breath and breathe, and then they just hammer it up the punch and then back into the volcano. So it's ridden as 2 halves of a loop, basically. You get a really tough, hard, like brutal side of the loop, and then you get a slightly easier recovery side of the loop. And this might not be new information for you guys. You guys have obviously ridden before and ridden in big groups, but it definitely felt like you have to, or I was basically trying to just make it through one half so that I could survive or just recover for the other. So this is the section where it kind of the watts come down. So we come down this little section, the watts come down, and we can recover a little bit. And the good thing about, or the thing that I do reasonably well on this lap, bear in mind this will be the second time we've gone up the punch, is I get good positioning, but I have a feather, and I decide that I'm not gonna like hammer the climb. I'm gonna be nice, or try and be nice and smooth with it. But even so, like there was just always guys riding off the front of this damn race, and it was absolutely killer. So for instance, I think I was at 3.9 watts for 20 minutes, 4.1 for 15, I think it's something like that. Is that what it is? Like, so my figures, or for 5 minutes, my figures for this race were just, they're all improvements. But like big improvements. I've never held 3.8 watts for 30 minutes before in a race. I've always, that's the highest wattage I've held for a race, kind of hands down. Previously it was like 3.6, and then for one race I held 3.7. For the time, for the distance of the race, and holding a certain wattage and watts per kg, these are all steps forward, even though the result of the race is that I still end up getting chucked out the back. But as you can see, because it's a massive group, like 120 or almost 120 cyclists off the line, there's just always someone, I guess, that has the legs to ride off the front. And from a cycling perspective, I don't know, like a lot of it didn't quite make sense to me, like why people would attack quite so early in what was going to be like a 4-lap race. I don't know, it just felt a little bit like a little bit aggressive. Like this was ridden very aggressively from like everyone. It's like everyone was angry. Everyone was angry, and their way to ride this was just like punching the whole time. And then the only time we weren't punching was when we were on the back side of the course for maybe like 45 seconds just to catch our breath back. But it was an aggressive race, but the style of which, and if you look at my watts down at the bottom of the screen, that it kind of like you put the watts on, they come off, put the watts on, come off. That is what I'm struggling with from a training perspective, that repeatability. So if I then kind of dial this back into like, okay, right, what am I going to do about that? How do I actually train that or program that into my training? Is first and foremost, as I said, I am doing some big gear training where I will try and keep my RPMs nice and low, 50 to 65 RPM, and crank out slightly higher wattage. That's strength, right? And the reason I am doing that is because when I get back into the pack, like this position here, I want to be able to grind out good wattage, 280 watts, at a lower cadence, so that I don't have to breathe as hard. I don't have to turn my legs as quickly, but I want to be able to do it without it just continually fatiguing my muscles. So I need to develop that strength. So that's part of the reason that I'm putting work into some of the big gear stuff. I have also, up until now, I've ignored sprinting. Ollie just checking on me in the comments whether I'm still in the group. Always appreciate you, man. And you can my replies and responses get kind of grammatically worse through the race, and I don't know how they get much shorter than here, but I'm pretty sure they do, because this was a super. It was so hard. So this time you can see that we are basically this point here where we're recovering, and I bring my cadence down. I want to be able to do that so that I can breathe and drop my cadence, rely on my neuromuscular strength, and instead of having to rely aerobically on my cadence, I want to be able to comfortably put out decent wattage. And I haven't quite got there yet, but I don't feel like I'm too far off. So one of the things I'm doing, like I said, is the strength training, kind of that low cadence, like heavy gear work, as well as working on some sprint work and some top end, just like hammering it and some building. So as far as the race goes, guys, this is a really interesting point, and the power-ups for this race are Feather, Ghost, and the Burrito. Now, I am not a front runner in the group, or certainly not a front runner in the front group. So for me, the Burrito doesn't hold too much benefit. But if you just watch in a second, like I feel like there's a bit of a misunderstanding about it, or people just using it in the wrong way, or just eventually just kind of being not dicks about it, but like if you understand it. So I get my Burrito, I realize I'm off the back, and I realize there's two guys behind me, right? So I've used my Burrito, I drop the draft from the guys behind me. But then I need those guys, because you see them right in front of me. So I bin my Burrito, I don't use it, but then the guy to my right uses his Burrito. And then so the guy behind us then has to work harder to try and get on the group. Now, if you're at the back of the group and you are effectively dropping your draft from guys behind you, they can actually help you, because if you drop back 5 yards and they kind of end up in front of you, like, or if you allow them to come in front of you, you can then use their draft. So trying to drop people from the back, I don't know, it feels counterintuitive. It feels like if you're at the back of the group and you are using your Burrito in an attempt to basically drop more people off the group, I don't know, it feels like not really understanding that those people are the wheels that you can actually use to draft to get back onto the group if you are still struggling. So that's my 2 cents on it. So, if I was at the front of the group, it feels like ultimately that a Burrito is a front of the group attacking power up. And if you're at the back of the group and you are, I just feel like you should just bin it, guys. Don't, like, dropping other people from the back of the group effectively doesn't help you unless you are strong enough to keep riding and bridging and staying on. So we're coming into effectively what is my last attempt at this punch. Now, obviously, I binned my Burrito, so I now don't have a power-up coming into the punch up into the volcano. So here's what I want you guys to look at very quickly. If you look at the bottom of the screen, there is that red block of watts from the last time we did the punch. And you can see that it's not like super spiky, but there is some longevity to it. I actually think I set a 1 minute power record on my Zwift Power or whatever, doing that, just holding the group in that one. But this time, I think the mistake that I make is I don't have a power up. So I basically ride this too hard. So instead of it being a measured, effectively red watt effort, it ends up being like a super spiky. Thanks, Ollie. The guys checking on me just as we're coming back into the volcano. So effectively, when I get to the top of this climb, my legs are so full of lactic, it looks like I just kind of give up. Honestly, I couldn't turn another crank on the pedals because I was so full of lactic. So here's the point, right? So I don't have a power up. Few people dropping their burritos, few people using their feathers. So I'm like, look, I have to ride this just as a rider. Like, I just have to hold on, and I'm doing a pretty good effort. But if you compare my spikes at the bottom of on the bottom of the screen, and the watts, the group breaks up, which is very disconcerting for me because that gives me fear. But you can see that the spikes are higher, but the duration is shorter. I just build that way too much lactic, and I'm basically at this point crying because I can't hold it for any longer. But that lactic is built up so much, I just can't continue to turn the pedals, and it kind of looks like I just kind of give up a little bit, but I'm basically trying to rest and then just like turn again because I'm trying to get that lactic out my legs. If I had been a little bit more measured with it, could I have basically sustained the effort for longer but not needed quite so much power? That, I think, would have been the smart thing to do. I wasn't cycling smart, I was just trying to get it done. Anyway, that was the point. I get dropped from the group, and then I pick up this small little group, and guys, I just want to say that you can obviously see on the bottom where I've had like a chill out section where I've been on my own. This 4-person group picked me up and I dive in with them, and the only reason I've included this is because of my sprint at the finish. Up until now, I haven't bothered with sprinting. It's not been in my wheelhouse. I haven't been able to do it because I've been having to work too hard up until the point where the sprint comes. So the sprint is basically negligible. There was effectively very little that I could do over and above just cycling. So I thought this was quite fun because with this group of now 5 of us, I think the guy who shoots off now, I think he does the right thing, which is use his burrito and then cycle off. But I think he did it a little bit early. That's in my opinion. But someone left a comment this morning about, just get to a certain point and commit to your sprint, close your eyes and just hammer it. And so I had that in my head, and I appreciate the comment as a consequence. So I realized that all I had to do, because I wasn't effectively racing for time here, I was just thinking, right, if I can beat these guys, then that's a win. And so it went from like trying to race it for time to, right, okay, well, look, here we go. We've got a little group. Let's try and be the guy that gets to the line first out the group. So I'm keeping an eye on my distance. It drops down to 0.2 of a mile, and then basically, having stayed with these guys up that little climb, I'm just like, right, I need to commit to this. And so close the eyes, jump on the pedals, I go for it. And it's admittedly not like, we're not talking crazy watts by any stretch of the imagination. I commit to it, I close my eyes, I think I open my eyes, look up and realize that I'm still nowhere near the line, but then carry on a little bit, and I'm pretty happy with that. So there we go, guys. This was an insanely fast race, and 3.9 watts for 20 minutes. Like all my lots of kind of power curve PBs in there, and this one absolutely destroyed me. I'll see you guys on the next one, guys. Thanks for coming along.